Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here with me today and allowing me to share something both deeply personal and profoundly collective. My name is Angel Cox. I am a PhD student at Purdue University. Within that role, I am a therapist, a scholar, and a researcher. But most importantly, I am a Black woman who has had to be strong far more often than she's been allowed to be soft. This talk is a weaving together of my clinical work, my research, and my personal history. It's titled Reclaiming Softness: How Plant Medicine Illuminates the Path to Healing from the Strong Black Woman's Schema. This is an invitation to rethink what can healing look like for Black women, not just surviving, but softening, resting, and reconnecting with joy. So let's begin by naming what we're up against: the strong Black woman's schema. It's more than a stereotype, it's an inherited armor, one that many of us were never given a chance to put down. This schema was born out of historical and generational trauma. Think of things like slavery, caretaking roles, and systemic neglect. Over time, it has crystallized into traits like hyperindependence, emotional suppression, perfectionism, and self sacrifice. I have worn this armor myself through my time in the military, my upbringing in foster care, and in my work as a community mental health therapist. At each stage, strength was expected, but vulnerability was rarely allowed. And yet, the psychological toll is immense. It shows up as exhaustion, invisibility, untreated trauma, and it's a way of being that says you don't get to fall apart and you don't get to ask for help. You just have to keep going. Reclaiming softness isn't about abandoning strength, it's about redefining it. So, through my research and examining how Black women can exit this schema, I developed a new phenomenon which I have titled the Soft Girl Renaissance. You might be familiar with the soft girl era from social media, but this is more than social media aesthetics. It's a resistance movement, and it's rooted in tenderness. For me, it took years to understand that rest isn't laziness. I had internalized the belief that if I slowed down, I'd fall behind. But what if softness is its own kind of strength? Black women choosing rest, pleasure, vulnerability, and luxury isn't frivolous, it's revolutionary. And choosing softness says, I don't have to earn my humanity through suffering. Now, that is a radical act in a world that expects us to endure without complaint. So, where does plant medicine come in? Substances like MDMA and psilocybin, when used intentionally and in therapeutic settings, can promote emotional openness, self compassion, and a reduction in fear based responses. These medicines help quiet the inner critic and allow space for grief, joy, and connection to surface. In my clinical work, I've seen Black women who remind me of myself start to unlearn the narratives that told them that they had to hold it all together. In my research, I've asked, well, what if we don't need to be broken to deserve healing? And what if healing isn't just about functioning, but about flourishing? Many women report feeling free, whole, or like I came home to myself. These aren't just altered states, they're remembered truths. And that's key. This isn't about escape, it's about integration. And so when I think about integration, I think about coming home to myself, not a perfect version of me, but a whole one. Psychedelic medicine can support that journey, especially in environments that affirm our cultural identity and our spiritual heritage. In my own life, as well as my work with my clients, I've seen how these experiences can help shift people from performance to presence, from obligation to authenticity, from surviving to truly living. And so when you pair these with culturally grounded therapy, the possibilities begin to expand. We begin to reimagine healing not just as a checklist, but as a transformation. And therapy must also evolve. It must make room for softness, not just coping and coping skills or coping mechanisms. It must be a space where grief is honored, where sensuality isn't pathologized, and joy isn't reserved only for those who have suffered the most. Healing becomes remembering that we were always worthy of softness. I'll never forget I had a client, a Black woman, who once said to me, "I've never had anyone ask me what I need before, and that stayed with me." Therapy that makes room for softness becomes a portal, not a prescription, and that portal, when opened, can shift individual lives and entire legacies. Even as the research on psychedelics continues to grow, we have to name the barriers that keep many Black women from accessing this kind of healing. For starters, the legacy of the war on drugs still lingers. Psychedelics are often associated with criminality or recklessness, not ceremony or healing, and that's by design. Communities of color were intentionally targeted, and that history hasn't gone away. There's also a deep, justified mistrust of the medical system. From Tuskegee to forced sterilizations, Black communities have not just been ignored, they've been harmed. And beyond that, therapy is still stigmatized. Vulnerability is seen as a weakness, and psychedelics are often marketed in whitewashed, gentrified spaces. All of this contributes to hesitancy, and we have to hold that with care, not judgment. But these barriers are not insurmountable, and that brings me to my final vision. I envision something that I'm calling SGR, Healing and Liberation Circles. SGR stands for Soft Girl Renaissance. It's intentional, heart-forward spaces where Black women can explore psychedelics in community, and with safety, reverence, and radical softness in the center. So these wouldn't be traditional, like clinical trials. They would be ceremonial. They would be facilitated by trained Black therapists and guides who understand the cultural, historical, and spiritual context of what it means to be a strong Black woman and having to carry the schema. These circles would hold space for that grief and joy, for silence and laughter, for ceremony, storytelling, and rest, for dancing and dreaming. In these spaces, healing wouldn't be about fixing what's broken. It would be about remembering what's always been whole. And that's the vision. That's the future. And I believe that we can build this together. As I near the end of this talk, I want to offer some truths that help me ground this work. These are implications for folks interested in doing this work, not just therapists and scholars, but people on the outside of the academy that need to keep these things in mind. First, stop pathologizing the strong Black woman and start listening beneath her. I know from experience that there is much more beneath the surface. Next, Black women deserve psychedelic care that is culturally rooted, spiritually aware, and trauma informed. Next, I believe it's important for us to remember that rest is resistance, joy is a birthright, and sensuality is sacred. We must reimagine what safety, healing, and community can look like, especially for those who've never seen themselves reflected in wellness spaces. I think it's important that I point out I am not saying that psychedelics are the answer, but they can be a key that helps open the door back to the self. So I want to leave you with just a couple more things. First, I want us to imagine a world where Black women don't have to be strong to be safe, where softness isn't a privilege, but it's a starting point. Plant medicine offers us a glimpse of that world, and it invites us to reimagine and to remember and to reclaim. The soft girl renaissance isn't coming, it's already here, and our task is to nurture it with care, courage, and community. Thank you for walking with me through this journey. I want to say especially thank you to IPN for allowing me this opportunity. And thank you to the scholars, the ancestors, the clients, and communities that inform this work. And thank you to those of you who hold space for Black women, not just as strong, but as soft, sacred, and whole. If you'd like to connect, collaborate, or learn more, I would love to stay in conversation. Peace, softness, and possibility to each of you. Thank you.